Welcome high in the Swiss Alps to the town of St. Moritz, a glamorous location and the heart of the ice sliding winter sports. Hello everybody, I'm Martin Haven. Alongside me in the booth, Olympic medalist Melissa Hollingsworth, ready to call the action in Heat 2 of 4 of the Bauhaus FIBT Skeleton Men's World Championships. With a brisk breeze and +0 temperatures on the track, the ice, well, Melissa Hollingsworth, barely ice at all. It's only +0.5 degrees.
Yeah, I suspect that this ice is going to be very, very soft for these athletes this second run. But for the first run, we had some interesting results with their start numbers to rank at the bottom.
We did. In third place after the first heat is Sergei Chudanov of Russia. He and teammate Alexander Trechikov chose to go in the first 10 start numbers, which is against all normal logic here at St. Moritz, where the longer the day, the faster the track. Second place was Martin Stukurs, and this is where we're trying to figure out what happened. Martin Stukurs started 30th in a field of 33, came down 0.02 of a second only behind the race leader, who had started 5th out of the field of 33. There is no rhyme or reason in normal cold temperatures here for that to be the case. The man who started with a brand new track record in the first heat, Alexander Trechikov, the Russian rocket, certainly lived up to his name at the start. And Melissa Hollingsworth, he drove really superbly. He's got the first round lead.
He did, with only 200 separating ranks number 1 and 2. This is going to be a very exciting race.
And it is such a close field, from Kristen Bromley in 4th position down to the tie for 11th with Ben Sanford and Matt Antoine. 0.3 of a second. The next 6 positions covered by 0.11 of a second. We've got a triple tie for 21st place. There's just ties all over the place. This is nearly 1,800 meters of ice, and we've already got about half a dozen, 8-9 athletes tying with their rivals in the field right the way down the order. So what do we expect? Do we expect lots of changes, or who knows? I mean, this is going to be a voyage of discovery for all of us.
We could see about midway through the field, the ice actually getting softer and slower for the athletes. So we're going to have to watch to the very end.
Well, historically, this track has got quicker. It may be just about to rewrite the history books if the ice temperatures are to be believed. Air temperature says +4 at the top, says +5 down at Horseshoe where those young men are. Ice temperature -1. Just talking to one of the British coaches there, saying that down at the top of the track near Sunny, it's -0 point and change. The runner temperature at the top of the track +6 degrees. You've got to be within a couple of degrees of that. Now, of our 33 starts in the second heat of 4, we go 20 down to 1, as we would do in a normal World Cup race, but then everybody else continues, so they'll all get a second slide. They will all be hoping, those that are outside the 20 now, that the track holds up and they get a chance perhaps to correct some of their earlier errors and get into that top 20. But it is not going to be easy. So Melissa Hollingsworth, as ever, you can't have a loose run. Even when there are 4 heats, you can't throw one away and keep the best 3. They all count, for you or against you.
They all count, and I am so surprised. Like you said, we're just over 1,700 meters of track, and with all the ties, every aspect is going to matter. Your start, your drive, the equipment choices, how you have it set up. It's all going to matter in the mental game. It's what it's going to come down to.
Well, whether you're standing at the track watching the action or looking at the scenery around, Lizzie Arnold's family just down there at the Horseshoe Bar enjoying the men's skeleton race, this is a stunning location. Since 1897, they've had a bobsleigh club here, and that is when they converted from racing on the road to Cell Arena to actually building a purpose-made track. This venue is older than Wimbledon. It's older than the Indy 500, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's older than the Grand Prix course at Monaco. It is one of the standout sporting venues on the planet, and still every year confuses, confounds, and delights in equal measure. We get our second heat of the men's skeleton world championship underway with the first of our 2 Japanese slider, Hiro Takahashi, 20th place in the first heat, separated by 0.02 of a second from his younger teammate.
You can see Takahashi taking a quick look up at the clock. You have 30 seconds from when the track is cleared for you to cross that eye. Otherwise, you're disqualified.
28 years old. He is 2 days younger, in fact, than his teammate Yuki Sasahara. I got that the wrong way round. But, you know, we won't argue the toss over a couple of days.
Und jetzt sehen wir natürlich die
See, it's quite
Gesamtzeit
windy
aus
and there's some debris
Läufen.
flying in the track because this track is built down the mountain using trees as support beams. So there's some leaves and some branches, and hopefully you aren't
Hopefully not
hitting
too
any
much
of that.
more. Yeah, no wildlife getting blown out of the trees.
Pretty low line in Horseshoe. You could see his pressure was sticking him on that corner. Luckily, he was able to get into telephone without that hit.
So much of this track, it's hand-built every year, changes, and the nuances, the subtleties change by the day with the weather conditions as well. So it's just an enormous puzzle.
You can see all the previous lines from the sliders going down the track, so that's acting as polish over the normally frosty ice track.
Well, the sun is starting to show its face as well, so some of the shades are there to keep the track out of the sunshine, because when it's this warm, you don't want any sun on it if you can avoid it. A 1:09.65, 0.3 of a second slower than his first heat. The speeds weren't quite a match for his first run either. Now, is that the athlete or is that the track? We'll be asking this for the next 32 sleds.
See him go through Horseshoe. That's pretty low. We usually see the sliders up at the roof, and you can see he got that rise again on the exit. A bit of an abrupt entry. His body was picked up going through telephone.
Our race leader, Hiratsu Takahashi of Japan, and now making his second televised start of his career, Yuki Sasahara with a Bromley sled. Former baseball player. If you think baseball's big in the US, it is huge in Japan, bigger almost even than in Cuba. Big fan of the Rocky films. Don't know what that tells us about him. And he works on the family farm just outside Nagano, the '98 Winter Olympic venue.
The ice getting quite a bit softer with the weather. You could see it flying out of his shoes.
Well, while his teammate went a couple of hundreds quicker, that's 600 or 700 slower on his second start for Yuki.
The 5:17, is that right?
Hiratsu Takahashi, your time in the first run.
Keep nice and quiet through these first few corners. And Melissa, you can see little bits of pine nut and stuff blown off the trees. If you can avoid those, that's more luck than judgment, I think.
And this ice is going to be very tricky because it is getting warmer, which you would think it's getting softer, but it is more polished. You can see those lines in the track, and that will set you up. If you're on the wrong line, your sled isn't going straight, under the pressure you will skid, and then that's breaking your speed down the track.
Again, just a fraction less speed than in his first run, but again, he did slightly slower start speed. He's changed his teeth overnight. 133.3. Slightly slower start. No, you see? No, I'm leaving that alone.
Add his last name in there, too. To see if you get it right.
So Shihara's slightly slower start speed has stymied his speed at the fastest part of the track. 1:09.73, the inverse of his 1:09.37 first run. Well, Melissa, two factors here with the warmer temperatures. Softer ice at the start means it breaks up and it makes it more difficult to grip.
It does, and it's just mushy. That's the best way to describe it. When you go into some pressure of the corners, you're just going to sink. So if you have a sharp edge on that runner, it will be digging into the ice, and it'll be a lot of friction slowing you down.
By sharp edge, she doesn't mean sharp edge like an ice skate. They are all rounded runners, but you can use a bigger or a smaller contact patch. Next up is Lukas Kummer, Switzerland, incidentally, with 14 men's skeleton world championship medals, lying second in the medals table of all time at the moment. Lukas Kummer, the reigning Swiss champion. Sixth fastest start in the field in the first heat, and that was part of the reason why he blitzed his Swiss opposition here December 30th in the Swiss Champs.
493, that's comparable to his first run of 491. Lukas has very powerful, short, quick strides. That's his advantage that he uses on that start. quiet. This is his home track. He has many runs to stay on this track. They had their Swiss championships just after Christmas. Great lines the first run. He was about middle of the pack with his start draw, so we're not really sure what happened. He was fast in training, fast in the team event. Maybe he just didn't choose the right equipment for this soft, warm ice.
23 hundredths of a second up on Yuki Sashihara. That's pretty much what he had at the start, 2400, so he's making no inroads into the Japanese at the moment. Now he's starting to find the speed. 101.2 at Tree. It's a little quicker than his first heat.
134.8 kilometers an hour. Oh, what a big hit going into the Spanish curve.
So when you're doing 80.5, 83.8 miles an hour, you do slide a lot more. 109.15, 4 hundredths of a second faster than his first run. And again, until we get down to our fastest, most competitive sliders, it's going to be very hard to tell what is happening. And even then,
came out of Martineau a little bit too early, big hit. This is an uphill portion of the track too, so when we're going with hundredths of a second between competitors, that may be a big oops for him going into the third heat.
Now the sled to run right up to the top of the track over the rougher ice there. Not so much of a worry. He might change his runners, or certainly they'll be polished up before tomorrow, so he's got overnight to sort out any marks. Next up is Alexander Gassner of Germany. We've got 2 German junior world champions here. 2010 and 2011 junior world champions. Gassner, 23-year-old soldier from Winterberg. See lots of fans at the bottom of the track now in BSC Winterberg, the bob and sliding club. And those are all the guys, the officials, the track workers there, the big fans. 2015 Worlds, the next World Championships will be held in Winterberg, Germany.
5:09, a little bit slower than his first start, almost a tenth slower, which is really surprising, but maybe with that softer ice, maybe he took 2 steps shorter. All of that will add up.
Well, the other thing, imagine you're a sprinter bursting out of the blocks. If the blocks move backwards a fraction, so much of that initial explosion of energy goes away. I'm not saying that the block moves back, but if you're not getting the grip on the ice, if your spikes are actually pulling through the ice, you lose some of your explosive elasticity.
He's not having the cleanest run. Little tiny mistakes too early into some corners, and obviously having hits coming out of Horseshoe. This will all be bleeding his speed at the bottom of the track. A late entry into Tree. When you get late in one of these corners, it sets you up late for all of the corners, and then you'll have a high point at the end and then possibly bumping walls. You have to work really hard.
Way slower than his first run at Tree. 133.4, 133.8 in the first run. Scraping his chin on the ice through Martineau and Portago, and he drops behind Lukas Kummer of Switzerland.
It's not a trend you're used to seeing for the German sliders.
No, and today has, and indeed yesterday, the skeleton races, full stop, have not been the happiest hunting ground for German athletes at all.
Coming out of Sunny into Nash, he goes too early in Dixon here. Just bumps him away. I haven't seen any athletes actually hit the wall there. We've seen them go in too early, but when you hit that wall, it really scrubs a lot of time. That's a hard hit.
2011 junior world champion from the Oberhof track is 22-year-old Alexander Krökel, a trainee policeman, started sliding in 2005. He was the European Cup champion 2009-10. There is your race leader from Switzerland, Lukas Kummer, their national skeleton champion. See all those needle spikes on the sled. Being a lefty, a southpaw, he's using his left hand to hold the sled. So one of the very few running on the right of all the groups, and that may help him with a little bit of traction.
It's very specific to each individual slider of how strong you are. Just like kicking a soccer ball, if you kick with your right or your left, you're going to be more comfortable and strong on the right or left side of your body when you're pushing the sled. That's all up to you how you choose that.
100th up at the start. There was only 2 hundredths of a second between these 2 young German sliders. Can he keep himself in the lead?
Watch his body as he goes into these corners. All of a sudden you see a big movement picking up his shoulder. He's trying to absorb entries. He was fairly clean going into Dixon, unlike Gazner. Ooh, big hit. He did that on his first run. Too much of a crossover out of it. You can see his speed is reflected, 98.1 kilometers an hour. That's almost one of the slowest speeds that we've seen today.
That's 3 kilometers an hour down on his first run. He was the very last man on the ice in the first heat, and that was just about 45 minutes ago.
133.5 kilometers an hour, trying to gain, but in this uphill section, I don't think he'll be able to do it.
133.6 to 135 kilometers on his last run. 109.5 to 109.12. So 109.50, that's a really disappointing run. And you know what? I think maybe we ought to make sure that the belts and shoelaces are taken away from the German coaches overnight. Their skeleton weekend has not been good so far.
Here he goes into horseshoe, and he has a very abrupt peak, a little bit too early, and he drops out of the corner, crossing too much, hits the wall really hard with both bumpers, not just the front bumper. It is a side smash with the entire sled and his body.
Throws him clear off the saddle, and that's 190 kilos of Alexander getting tossed in the air like a doll. Well, next up, Ed Smith of Great Britain, third out of the start shed. Top 10 start for head first, Ed, but didn't get the neatest lines. Let's see if he can pick up a few places from his current position of 15th. Another of the Black Rock sleds. 4.99, not bad.
And great line through kink 1, minimal work, straight lines. Look at how calm he is. He's just sort of looking for his entrance in the wall. Wow, did you see that branch in the track?
Well, it is a natural track outdoors. It's in the forest. As you can clearly see from every single shot. 700 up. Don't forget, Lucas Kummer, the leader, was 18th after the first heat and was 1100s in front of him. And he's holding on to that, but only just 600s is the gap.
He had a lower line in horseshoe. His speed is not as high as what it should be.
Kummer 101.2, 100.9 for head first Ed Smith. Kummer 134.8. Ed needs the same to stay in front. He might become another victim to the Swiss. Good line to the bottom, 134.8. Is it enough to hold on? Can he just cling on through Portago to the line? Yes, to hold a lead of a 600th of a second. So 500s slower than Lucas Kummer on that run. The gap between them narrows even further. Well, good news for Ed at the moment is that he has not slipped a position. He'll be trying to see if maybe some of the others drop behind him.
Look at the power. Look at the snow spray out of his shoes. When he's loading on his sled, you want all your momentum going forward to help that velocity. He had a great line out of Martineau, stays off that right wall. That could be exactly why he stayed in the leader position.
We are talking so many tiny gaps all the way up and down the leaders board. There is Ed in the leaders box as Raphael Meyer gets ready to come to the ice. Friends and family of British Skeleton up there. Cresta Run, the rhubarb and custard colours of the Cresta Run Club. Next up, Raphael Meyer. Austria leads World Championship medals in men's skeleton with 18 medals of all different colours. In fact, a number of the coaches, one there, Martin Rettel, their current coach, Andy Schmidt, Ricky Grunberger, they've all added to that tally for Austria over the years.
This is a great position for Raphael to be in. He was 27th at the start of the first run, so a 5.11, that's 400ths faster than his first run, and that will help him. Look at how quiet he is.
As well.
Yeah, low. He's aerodynamic. Oh, and he went over top of those branches. I could just imagine what was going through his mind as he saw them. Do I hit them? Do I go through them? Do I go around them?
Luckily, they're so thin and so dry, they just fragment into dust immediately, and I don't think that would have slowed him down.
You hope not. You hope that he actually didn't run it over with his runners, because our runners are so fragile. I know it sounds funny, we're going 140 kilometers an hour on them, but go over a granular sand and you scratch them and then that's it, they're toast.
102.6 kilometers an hour. That's decent speed there. That is the quickest we've seen. Raphael Mayer had a really nice looking first slide. Do you know what? He's backing that up superbly.
It is. He looks so quiet. No movement from him on that sled. That means minimal work. 136.2 kilometers an hour.
Exactly the same as the first run. Great speed from him. He was third in the speed traps. 108.83. No wonder Martin Rettel looks pleased with that. That, in the tight group in which he's in now, might be enough to put him up 5, 6. I mean, who knows how many places.
That's so exciting for Raphael.
Well, 108.83 would have left him 10th in the first heat, not the 14th he was in.
Here he is coming in this long straightaway between the kinks. Hits that branch. Yes, he ran over it, actually broke it. I'd be interested to see what his runners look like right now. Great line through horseshoe. A little bit low, but he handles it very well and has that long entrance in the telephone. No abrupt entry or a hit.
Well, now that's the classic Swiss line as well. They use it in bobsleigh as well. Medium height through horseshoe and get that exit right. Windy day here in St. Moritz for the second of 4 heats of the Skeleton Men's World Championships. And you can see our race director there asking Don Parsons to wait. Now, are they going to swoop? Talking to Mark Wood. Woody. So he's going to get his jacket on. Now, are they going to sweep the track and get some of those branches out of it?
I hope so. I hope that's what they're doing. Dom needs to stay very focused right now, and obviously for his nervous system, he was ready to go. Our starts, what we do to be stimmed is timed to the second, really, of what we're doing, what types of jumps, drills that we're doing so that we're ready to push that sled as fast as we possibly can.
Well, we often see cautions in NASCAR races for debris, and this may be the first time, I think, that I can remember, Mel, that I've seen a caution, if you like, in a skeleton race or a bobsleigh race for debris on the track. And with the wind blowing in, that might not be the last either. I mean, the trees here are very dry, very brittle, and you do get branch fall in the wind no matter what the conditions.
And Dom can't be thinking about this. For all he knows, he doesn't know what's in the track. He just knows that they need to clean something out. That can kind of maybe have you thinking about fear.
Yeah, well, they got the big screen up above, and there's also a screen there for the coaches to look at. And you can see the brooms they traditionally use here. They use the old-fashioned witches' broom switches, because they're just great for moving what is normally crystalline, icy snow around in the track. It doesn't get wet and soggy here. You know, normally it is so cold that it's about as sticky as sand is normally, and the track workers trying to clean out that straightaway. That's from kink 1, kink 2 rather, down to tree, down to wall rather. So lots of fans watching around the track. Saw Clifton Rodsley, the president of British Skeleton, up at the top of the track, and Lucas Kummer, the Swiss, with his fan club there, friends and family. There's the horseshoe bar. See, they got the bratwurst going outside, the glühwein. Bit of coffee as well, if you really have to. Like if you're working, for instance. Sliding, maybe. There's our race leader, Raphael Mayer of Austria. 20 years old. Andy Schmidt on the left. Talked about Austria's 18-medal haul in men's skeleton world championships, and he's added getting on for half a dozen individual to that. Colours from New Zealand. Catherine Eustace had a great race in the women's competition, and Melissa Hollingsworth, Ben Sanford looking strong in the men's as well. Tied for 11th, one of a huge number of ties in this 33 sled field.
Yeah, it's so unique because you look at all the different athletes and their strengths, whether it's their starts, their driving ability, their weight, aerodynamics, and we're tied in so many different positions. It is very unique and very perplexing.
Umbrellas there at the top to keep the sun off the runners, to stop the runners getting too hot. The hotter you runner, the faster it melts the ice as it travels over it. It just reduces the friction. And now Dominic Parsons of Great Britain has his chance to take on this St. Moritz ice track.
Dom is such a strong starter. He had the start record up until the first heat today from the team event.
Well, in his first start, remember, he blasted off, and as he was loading, the sled popped out and then was luckily caught by the groove with the other runner. Let's hope he has the same speed, but less of the drama this time round.
He needs to make sure all of his energy is going forward. On his load, he hit that saddle and it popped it out. This time he was safe. Great job, Dom.
489 first getaway, 497, understandably a little cautious about that second load. Now he's got that down pat. Tomorrow he can really open the taps and light the afterburners. Down from kink 1 to 2, keeping it nice and straight on this St. Moritz ice track.
Now that is interesting. That could have been a bit of a mental game because of his first start. It could have been the nervous system, maybe a bit fatigued because he was still to go about 3 minutes ago and then had the hole in the track. So we'll have to see if he's calm and relaxed on his sled to be able to make up that time with his driving ability.
Well, the one thing he did have is good momentum into that first corner, so that shows that there was plenty of power with the load once he knew that he got his sights lined up on the sled properly. 100.9 clicks, 62.7 miles an hour.
He's back.
Well, he's going quicker than in his first run. 133.6 at the bottom last time down. 135.4, losing a little bit of ground to our current leader, Raphael Meyer of Austria. There was precious little air between them, just 100th of a second. Dom loses 22 hundredths or 23 hundredths overall. Well, some of that perhaps worry about his starting technique, and some a little bit that delay of 3 or 4 minutes unexpectedly.
Such a strong starter, so much power, long legs, tall athlete, but playing it safe, knowing that consistency is key at World Championships and Olympic Games when you've got 4 runs. Slight tap here going into Shamrock, and it bumps him away. That friction of his bumper on the ice will definitely be hundredths of a second.
Another southpaw, so starting with his left hand on the saddle and running down the right wall. Most of our sliders are right-handers. You saw him chatting there with Ed Smith, his teammate. And next up is Matt Antoine of the USA. Now, Matt had knee surgery during the summer, and he's lost some of the fizz that he's expecting to gain back before the games in Sochi. 6'2". From Pereira-Duchesne athlete. Still got plenty of sliding ability and a great frame for this long track as well. He's long and lean.
He chose to put his left runner in the right groove, try and get a head start on that kink. Quiet. You can see it's windy, everything blowing around him. Be interesting if you could feel that wind pushing him around, having to stabilize his sled going into wall.
Well, you can see in the top of the shot some of the shades there wafting away. Now, of course, that helps us to act as a windbreak. And with some of the high walls here on this natural track, maybe you're sheltered. I don't know, maybe you will get some crosswind skids.
And the wind having an effect on the texture of the ice, too, will make it a little bit skiddier. Oh, and a hit out of horseshoe. That's going to reflect in his speed here.
Matt Antoine, start number 24, earlier in the first run. 101.8 to 102.4. He's not quite as quick.
You can hear a little bit of scuffing, and he's just trying to be so relaxed. That's his toes dragging on the ice slightly. 135 kilometers an hour.
Now, in the first heat, he had only 134, and that's just a few hundredths of a second slower than his first run. He takes the lead from Raphael Meyer, but what was nearly a 4/10 lead comes down to 7 hundredths at the line. That shows where Meyer has found his speed. It's from horseshoe down.
When these times are as close as what they are together, you cannot make a mistake. Here he goes into horseshoe, and his height is just too much of an angle going into telephone, and he bumps the wall. You can see he sees that, and he was trying to lift his shoulder, but at that point it was too late. The work had to be done in the corner. Big direction change and friction hitting that natural ice.
Yeah.
Well, 6'2" of Matt Antoine tied with 6'6" of Ben Sanford, joint 11th place after the first heat. Two really strong-looking runs. Fresh plaster on his chin because he cut it being thrown off his sled in the foam at the bottom. So that will have annoyed him substantially. Very sanguine guy, athlete's rep. And He'll be going with that view, particularly to the track in Sochi.
He is so tall. For him to bend over and push the sled in this awkward running position is very, very difficult, hence the hamstring injuries that he has.
5:16 first start, loads nice and early for the first corner, 5:24 again. Perhaps the athlete's thinking that this kink 1 to kink 2 straight away and the one that follows are more important than a few hundreds in the start. And again, you talk about hamstring, he may just be feeling a fraction tight after the first start.
That was a really nice transition in snake, really early. He was able to not have any skids going into Sunny. Watch his body as he goes into those corners. If his abruptness, his shoulders lift really high. I don't know if he touched the wall. He had a skid coming out of Horseshoe.
102.4 to 101.4 last heats to this.
Skidded off of Shamrock in the Devil's Dyke.
Well, down here where the speeds are at the highest, this is where his weight helps him. Let's see if he can keep a neat and tidy line at the bottom, because he found good speed in the last heat, 135.8. He's at 135.3. It's not bad, but it's not great. He will not take the lead. He goes a long way back, 4/10 nearly behind Matt Antoine. They were tied in the first heat. That's not the run that Ben Sanford needed.
Wow, he made some mistakes, and that reflected in his time for sure. Those hits and skids, getting pressures in the wrong points of the corner.
Only the 6th fastest run, and he's only the 10th slider.
Here he goes in the Horseshoe. He's leaning away. He sees he's going in too early, but now he has too much of an abrupt angle up into that roof. Let's see, did he actually hit it? No, he came very close, but it's too sharp of an angle coming out, and then that's when the domino effect happened with being late in the rest of those corners, hitting the walls.
At least he didn't get hurt slowing the sled down in the foam. 10 of our 33 sliders down here in St. Moritz. Next up is Eric Nielsen of Canada. Eventually we would have a break after the first 10 sleds, but the jury, I think, probably rightly wanting to get this race run before conditions change too much.
So he's got his legs set up very similar to track and field athletes in the block. Staggered start, using all that power off that front leg. 497. I would suspect that Eric would be a lot faster, peaking for World Championships, but he has been sick just a couple of weeks ago, and that could have had a big effect with his training phases.
Well, great momentum, 56.3 kilometers an hour. He may not have covered the ice quite as fast as he would have wanted, but boy, he got all his body weight onto that sled like a rocket.
He needs to stay calm here. Watch his body. You'll be able to tell if he has the right entrances, if there's any abruptness as he enters the corners. He's staying calm and relaxed.
0.03 of a second up on Matt Antoine from the first heat is now 0.2 of a second.
101.7 kilometers an hour, that's in the mix.
Quicker than his first run.
Sometimes it's great to just get that first run out of the way at World Championships. We know his fiancée Heather is up watching right now, back in Calgary, cheering him on.
135.0 in the first heat, 135.1, just a whisker quicker, so the track still just about giving up its speed. 108.84, 108.67, nearly, well, 0.17 of a second quicker than his first run. So there is still a little bit of speed and life left in this track.
And it's going to be interesting watching all these sliders come down in jump positions, because they're only separated by hundredths of a second here for the next few.
Well, we are now in this group from 4th down to tied 11th that was covered by 1/10 of a second.
Eric goes in the Horseshoe. He might not even realize his body is in that banana position. There's just so much pressure, and it's such a quick whip around, but you really want to get that height. Wait for the sled to come down, then help it out of the corner. Smooth entrance into telephone. Great job, Eric.
Well, good looking slide down the bottom, just brushes the wall. That's 1/10 of a kilometre an hour gone. Not bad job, face man, not bad at all. Track record set by Frank Rommel last Thursday in bitterly icy conditions. First heat here, though, we were just 1/10 of a second away. Are we going to see a new record in, I don't know, 14 degrees warmer ice? This is Christopher Grotehair, the junior world champion, 20-year-old student from Oberhof in Eastern Germany. Wow, Wow, look at the cameraman getting blown around on his tower by this gusting wind.
It is extremely windy right now. If we had that view, I wonder if these sliders can actually feel it down there. The Germans have the 4 sliders here at World Championships because their junior slider won Junior Worlds. So that allows them to have that 1 extra slider. It shows the depth of their program in Germany and all of their sliding sports, how competitive they are.
They had an extra slider in men and women's, in men's skeleton rather, and in the 2-man and 4-man. Well, they could have had in the 2-man. Oh, very high line. And Melissa almost falls off her chair in sympathy.
Well, I could see it happening. He was going too early, and then he was trying to pull his sled away, and then just that abrupt entry, direct line up into the roof.
Wow, and look how far he's gone back. He started this run 300ths of a second behind Eric Nielsen. He's 55 hundredths. 133.9 is 2 kilometers an hour too slow. A nightmare for Christopher Grothair, one that I'm sure Anja Huber can sympathise with. Jens Müller, I might have to find him tonight and buy him a beer because there's not much else going right in his day. Although drinking beer with me probably isn't going right in his day either.
Watch his body English as we see this replay going into Horseshoe. He is leaning away. He's going too early. He recognized that. All of a sudden, the sled goes in as late as possible and up into the roof. That is not just a gentle tap. That is smashing the roof. Really hard, severe direction change. All the snow and ice falling off the roof.
Race leader Eric Nielsen doesn't quite know what to make of this track either. Melissa Hollingsworth, with the gusty wind we're getting, at some stage, it'll be a headwind. At some stage on this track, a crosswind. At some stage, a tailwind. So the gusts are going to change the track for all these sliders differently.
Most definitely what will be consistent is how it's changing the texture on the surface of the ice and how glassy it will be.
Well, Thomas Dukos of Latvia, 0.2 of a second in front of our current leader Eric Nielsen from the first heat, and another big start, 4:89 getaway.
He was talking about over Christmas of how busy him and his wife were taking his son to hockey in Riga several times a week. They spend quite a bit of time at the hockey rink. That's their big passion.
It's a good hour from Sigulda as well into downtown Riga. So ice hockey is the winter sport in Latvia. And the fact that anybody knows the names of Thomas and Martin's Dukos shows just how much success these guys have had.
Beautiful lines coming from Thomas right now. Everything is running very smooth. 102.5 kilometers an hour. That is one of our top speeds so far on this second heat.
Absolutely. This is the run we expected to see from him in the first heat, and he didn't quite stitch it together. 134.8 first run speed. What's he got here? 135.4, that's a much nicer looking run all the way down. And again, that could vault him a few places up the order. That really could. 108.39, that's a good slide. And that would have left him in 4th place in the first run. That's a full second quicker than we just saw from Christopher Grothair, the German. That's how tough a time the Germans are having right now.
That's great. Thomas is tied with John Daly, so this will put some pressure on Daly to see what he has coming down this track that he loves so much.
Well, we always see the Latvian Barmy Army supporting their athletes, and John Daly's got family and friends here as well.
Calm, collected, smooth lines here down in the lower portion of the track. No movement as he's in the top speed portion going into Martino.
Okay, we're hearing now that Dom Parsons will get a rerun because of that track delay before his start. So we'll wait and see if that works well for him. Last rerun in a major competition, Lee Johnson got hit by a coin in 2002 in Salt Lake. Went at the end of the run, went considerably slower. John Daly blasts off to a cacophony of noise from friends, family and teammates. Tied for 7th with Thomas Dukos. Needs a great run here and a 4.97 start. Just a whisker slower than the 4.96 in the first heat. But again, good first corner momentum for John.
We've only seen that tactic come from the Americans of where they're putting that left runner in the right group to try and get through kink a little easier.
It also has the advantage, it means you're running down between the spurs of the marks the bobsledders use, and so hopefully the ice shouldn't be so churned up for your spikes.
A little bit early into Dixon, he handled it really well.
Horseshoe could be pivotal. Good clean exit. It is a good clean exit now. He may have stopped losing time. 1:02.9 is quicker than Ducour's was.
Nice early entrance into tree. We haven't seen a lot of those this race, but he's going a little bit late there into bridge or leap, getting them all mixed up.
1:34.9 first heat, 1:34.5. That's slower than Ducour's. He won't catch the Latvian, so that tie for 7th place is broken. And in fact, John Daly comes down 1:08.68. And that is only 0.04 of a second away from his first run, with a start that was only 1/100th away. So that's very consistent sliding from John. And that was really a slightly loose first run from Thomas Ducour's that's made the difference between them.
I'm surprised of how consistent this ice has stayed. Have a look at the groove he's using. That could be risky as well, because maybe there's frost on the other side of that groove that other runner is going through, because other sleds are not on that same path. Here he is in Horseshoe. He's got great height right underneath that Omega sign. Comes down smooth, clean entrance into telephone.
Thomas Ducour's leads from John Daly and Eric Nielsen.
Sounds good.
We have our fastest 6 athletes to come, and then a further 13 to follow them. Frank Rommel of Germany, the best placed German, in 6th spot after the first heat, and the only man in 2 full seasons to have won a men's skeleton race other than Martin Ducour's. Since September 2011, I beg your pardon, since the start of 2011 calendar year in January, Ducour's has won 20 of 22 races he's entered.
This is the slider I'm most interested in, to see how the draw affected his first slide, because he was 27th off. Now he's in the mix of the pack. Will he be able to pull up and move forward?
Started nearly a 1/10 of a second slow. Was he running into a headwind there? Little logo on the chin of his helmet is that of the Dracula Club up here at the top of the track. The club's founded by Gunter Sachs, the former president of the Samoritz Bobsleigh Club.
A little bit of a skid there. His height was late in Snake 2, skidded off. You can tell when Frank is having some issues, because we never see him move, but if his feet move a little bit, we know he's having issues with his control.
He is losing a lot of time, 4600ths back.
Good speed, 102.8 kilometers an hour. Maybe he might be able to find something here in this lower portion of the track.
He had 1:36.4 at the bottom. He's just a whisker quicker than he was in the first heat in terms of speed, but he's nowhere near close to catching Thomas Ducour's. 1:36.9, still a fraction quicker. That is quicker than Ducour's. What will he bring the gap back to? 2100ths. Now, is Thomas Ducour's already regretting that loose first run? Can he do what Sarah Reid did in the women's competition and recover from that and claw his way into a medal position? Frank Rommel lies 2nd, John Daly 3rd, Eric Nielsen 4th. Thomas Ducour's still leads.
Troubles on the start, further back than what he was on that first run. Like you said, I don't know, that load isn't the cleanest. It was a lot of momentum going to the side that could have...
Well, he had great speed at the bottom, whatever what was wrong with the track. And again, like Marion Tace, he finds speed. The more kilometers of ice he uses, the closer he gets. Doesn't look overjoyed though, does he? Plenty to think about overnight for Frank. There's the big smile. And now here is our Olympic champion, called the first couple of heats of the women's race with me yesterday in the booth. And now with his Montgomery sled on the ice, girlfriend Darla, wife now Darla, at the top of the track cheering him on along with his teammates. Let's see what the Olympic champion can do. 5th place off a 3rd fastest start. John is dialing himself in at the perfect time. Gets away with it, doesn't get skidded off the bump. 4:93, that's not a bad start either.
That's not what we were expecting, though. He got up onto that corner of Kink. That's what happens when you try to run it really far. You don't have a lot of room to get prepared for that first corner.
Well, one of the reasons he's building his own sleds is he says none of the others are flexible enough for how I want to slide. They all feel like planks of wood, there's no give. And that's what he's built, a sled that he can mold to his will, never mind his body.
Great height in horseshoe. Great line into telephone. 102.5 kilometers an hour. That's competitive, even though he had troubles at the start. Let's see if he can make up some time here at the bottom.
Quicker in each of the high-speed splits so far. 134.6 last time, little wilder though through the fast four corners. Will he have that speed again? 134.8.
That's the 4th place.
A hit going into Portico.
Well, he's not going to take the lead away from Thomas Ducos, and unfortunately he slips down 3 further spots.
He's lost a tenth.
He's in 4th place at the moment.
Well, it's disheartening to come across the line and see a number 4 rank, of course, but you have to keep it in perspective that these guys are only separated by a few hundredths of a second, and there's still 2 runs tomorrow. A little bit of trouble there. You can see he was getting height late, trying to pull that flexible sled out of the corners and overcorrecting, and that's what happens when you just aren't jiving with that new sled quite yet, but it definitely is showing some potential.
Rattles the wall out of Martineau and Portago, 1600 slower than his first heat, but it is starting to come back to John Montgomery.
Wink to his family back in Manitoba watching.
Next up, Dr. Ice, Kristen Bromley. Going to be big celebrations, whatever happens with Kristen. His girlfriend, longtime partner, Shelley Rudman, claiming victory in the Women's World Championship just a couple of hours ago. And then immediately heading off to the doctor to get some medicine for their daughter, Ella. See, when you're a mum, sometimes you get time off being a mum to compete. The rest of the time, you're back to being mummy.
Kristen had a 21st ranked start the first heat. Let's see if he can improve on that for this second heat.
Well, Kristen, it's all about the drive. 5:01 might creep him into the top 20 at the end of the run, but 55.7 is still good momentum, and the runners are tracking neat and true on the Bromley sled.
That's the quietest I've ever seen him on his sled. We're usually seeing his legs out to the side, wiry, but he's very quiet on his sled.
Well, he kind of leads with his chin, and the legs almost flow behind as if they're being pushed along in a mountain stream or something.
Nice line into horseshoe. Great height. Uses the toe slightly to pull himself out.
Oh, he's 3 tenths behind Thomas Ducos, showing what an epic run Ducos laid down.
Things are getting a little bit out of his control here in this lower portion. You can see he's skidding down here in these 4 right-hand corners, sorry.
Even if you close your eyes, you can hear the speed ebbing away. He's a kilometre an hour slower than he was in the first heat, and that is not going to help him. And he drops down 5 spots. Yikes. Brother Richard is going to be as upset with that as Kristen himself. Well, we talked about how close this battle is from where Kristen was in 4th down to the tie for 11th, 3 tenths of a second. We expected lots of changes. Melissa Hollingsworth, we got lots of changes.
Yeah, we do. You can see Kristen here in the lower portion of the track. He was a little bit late, skidding. He's using his toes to try and straighten himself out. Overcorrecting here, coming into that wall, just pushes him away a little bit too early. It would actually push him down and get more height at the exit. Richard's stressing right there.
Yep. Kristen will have plenty to think about as well. Few indeed. He lies 4th with our fastest 3 athletes still to go. Lots of banging on the hornings from the Russians. 2 of our fastest 3 are Russian athletes. Sergei Chudinov, 3rd after the first heat, and again a man who's finding his form this season at just the right time. The 28-year-old from Moscow, 6'1" and nearly 180 pounds of him. He's a big, strong man at the start, gets a 491 getaway.
And he used that Russian tap toe to get himself around kink 1 instead of the constant drag around the corner.
Your time in the second round, 1:08.6.
Thomas Ducos has started faster in this heat.
1:08.91.
He's half a second up on our current leader, Thomas Ducos.
A little bit of a skid off of S2. You could see just with his body language of where he was trying to control the sled.
Well, can Chudi do what teammate Maria Oliver in the women's race could and produce consistency when it really is going to benefit the most? 1:03.2 is great speed.
Definitely doing something right. You can see his head get sucked down into the pressure of these corners here at the bottom.
1:36.5 in the first heat. What's he got? 1:35.7, not a disaster. The Russians went off early. Chudinov was 8th out of the start, and a 1:08.30. All right, not as quick as his first run, but keeps him in the lead with our fastest 2 athletes to go.
That was a risky stop, trying to see if he's still in the first position, not hanging onto his sled.
I'll have to chat to my friends at Infostrada Sports and find out what the Russian stats are in men's skeleton world championships.
Good height and horseshoe. Comes out, great speed, 103.2 kilometers an hour.
Chudinov, as we said, early off in the first run, should not have benefited him more than the late starters. Didn't seem to make any difference. He leads with 2 fastest first heat runners yet to go. And they started almost literally at the opposite ends of the draw. 30th start draw for this man, our World Cup leader and the defending world champion Martins Dukurs. The man who beat him by 200 started 5th. So the ice, as identical perhaps as it could be still.
Martins is going to be motivated to make up some time here. He's not used to being in the second position.
Track record 4:73. He starts 4:80, a couple of hundreds slower than his first run, but he won't mind being beaten at the start by Alexander Tretiakov, as long as he's not beaten at the finish. Well, we've seen very few sliders get close to or better their first run, but he needs to.
Everything is looking perfect right now. We'll have to see. Look at those entries. His body is not moving on his sled at all. Minimum work, great height and horseshoe, long entry into telephone. Everything is so smooth. 102.9 kilometers an hour, a little bit slower than Chudinov.
Identical to his first heat speed. He had 1:36.8. He was the fastest in the final speed trap last time. Made a mistake between the last 2 corners. 1:37, 1:36.9. Again, he's the fastest so far. Can he get Martineau and Portago right? Ice flew up. 1:07.99. Wow, okay. That is the gauntlet laid down to Alexander Tretiakov. That's what Martins Dukurs, the double world champion, has. What has Tretiakov got to show us? This is so close.
It is great to see a race, finally. Look at the power he has coming off the block, using those really old Adidas spikes, too. I'm surprised he hasn't changed over to the new ones. A little more grip.
He's still been our quickest starter almost all season. Little brush with the wall there, tiniest of scrapes. Throws him high here and late, but the speed is good. He and Frank Rommel joint fastest at the bottom.
Give a wave to his little baby girl back home, Latvia.
Well, more Russian noise now. Coach Willi Schneider lowers the sled for Alexander Tretiakov. Alex, if you've got it, this is the time to produce it.
I love how he stands so calm and collected on that block and then rockets off. Look at that speed and turnover, long legs.
4:73 track start record, 4:77. He's closer to Dukurs. The gap between them was 200s. He's opened it up to 5 as he loads.
Your time in the second run,
So we're making little mini adjustments all the way down to wall.
A fraction quicker momentum, 57.1 for Dukurs, 57.2 for Tretiakov. Not so skiddy now through Snake.
No, he's nailing those entrances, but oh, a little bit of a bump off of Nash. What's going to happen? Slight push away at Dixon. It's those little tiny things that will bleed your speed.
When you're only 200s apart, nothing can be left to chance. 600s up becomes 100th of a second. 1:02.9 for Dukurs. Tretiakov has got 1:03.3. But Dukurs had more at the bottom of the track. What has Tretiakov got left?
Wow, this is amazing.
136.9, same as Ducours. Again, we're on target for a really close finish. 300s becomes 900s of a second at the line. 107.92 slide, the fastest 2 runs in the competition for Alexander Tretyakov, the fastest 2 starts in the competition for Alexander Tretyakov. Martin Ducours will have to come from behind to take his 3rd World Championship gold medal. But Tretyakov, there's no breathing space in this one, Melissa Hollingsworth.
Not at all. We're not used to seeing this at all after 2 runs. Martins was very quick to be like, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow?
Well, you know that he will think about it. Alex there with a sore shoulder from a brush on the wall. We say a tap when you're doing 80. You think a tap. Walls hit back. So, our fastest 20 down. The remaining 13 sliders will continue with their second heat. But it is the Russian rocket, Alexander Tretyakov, who leads this race. And Melissa Hollingsworth, there is still just the breath of air between him and his arch-rival, Thomas Ducours.
Oh, yeah. It's absolutely amazing. Tretyakov had that speed. The midway of the track comes from his start. With matching speeds at the bottom, it's going to be a great race tomorrow.
What it has done is it's made it a 2-horse race, Billy Schneider, for the gold. It is just Tretyakov or Ducours. They're 6,500s ahead of Chudinov in 3rd, 1.2 ahead of Ducours, Thomas Ducours in 4th, 1.5 ahead of Frank Rommel in 5th. Those are the massive margins behind the 2 titans that straddle this track, Alexander Tretyakov and Martins Ducours. The question is, not can anyone get to them, but can either of them get to each other mentally and somehow whittle away at their rivals? Will changes in the weather or the setup of the sleds overnight affect the balance of power? And how will Tretyakov deal with going into Heat 3 with a lead over the man that he has not beaten in over 2 seasons? Let's find out what they think at the moment. Catch up with John Morgan.
Okay, 3rd place, Sergei Chudinov. 2 good runs.
Yeah, good. Да, хорошо, все проехал. В принципе, мы рассчитывали на этот результат, мы готовились к чемпионату мира.
Well, he's happy to be in this position in St. Moritz. Good luck. And Sergei, okay?
Да, все хорошо. Все только начинается. Завтра еще будем продолжать бороться. Всем спасибо, кто болеет, переживает. Мы стараемся.
He's also happy with his position. And Superman, did you like your draw number? Do you think that worked out for you with the Russians going early, you going later? Any disadvantage?
Maybe it was not the best decision to take this starts number, but that was my decision, and I need to handle with this. Also, first run was not so good, second was better, but still was some mistakes, so I'll try to fix tomorrow, but pretty tough race, so tomorrow we'll see.
Good luck tomorrow, you guys.
Well, out of force of habit, going last to Martins Ducours, although he lies 2nd behind Alexander Tretyakov with Sergei Chudinov in 3rd position. It's going to be a blustery afternoon and maybe a little bit of restless night, Melissa Hollingsworth, you'd think, for both of those top 2, because nothing is cut and dried.
Not at all. Ducours is probably not that happy, and Tretyakov is used to chasing all the time, so he's going to have that pressure on top of him all night of just trying to hang on to the lead.
Well, we go into our 3rd and 4th heats tomorrow, and we will find that we were told, in fact, that it was going to be Dom Parsons who got a rerun of his first heat, but in fact Ed Smith, because he ran over some debris in the track, now gets his rerun at the end of the top 20 and before the 21st and so on sliders. In fact, we got 3 sliders tied in 21st spot. Now the gamble here, Melissa Hollingsworth, is you can't choose which of the 2 runs you want to keep. By opting to take the rerun, you automatically delete your 2nd slide. And so that means that this has got to be better than the 109.20 that he set last time down. Now, of course, this is his 3rd start of the day. Nobody will make one of those. He went 497, 499, and it's a 5:01, as you would expect. It is a slower start. 55.6, a little less momentum in the first corner as well.
I think the trend of the starts have been a little bit slower anyhow, so that doesn't put him too far outside of the entire group. But it will be interesting to see if fatigue, like the nervous system fatigue, if that sets into play, if he's on his game, having to do a third race run.
100.9 kilometers an hour at this speed trap last time down. As he exited Horseshoe, that's a good-looking line in. Now, it has to be his decision whether he takes the rerun or not. 1:01.1. He will clearly have felt that the sled decelerated, perhaps, as he ran over the debris, and will think it's worth having another go.
Well, he really didn't have much to lose. He was in 15th spot, so really, if you're 15th, you move up a little bit, it's worth it.
A fraction slower at the bottom of the track, and again, that might just be wear and tear on his runners and on the ice. It's a 1:09.23. It is slower than his last run. The gamble did not work, so he's dropped 0.03 of a second on that slide. That means he remains in 15th place, but he's 0.03 of a second closer to Lucas Kummer in 16th. You say, well, yeah, 0.03, what difference does it make? It might make a difference tomorrow.
A little bit of a lower line in Horseshoe. That will not help his speeds, but kind of abrupt going into Telephone 2.
Yeah. 300s, well, sometimes you convince yourself it's worth the risk, and sometimes you convince yourself it's not. Our 20 sliders, the fastest 20 in the field, have gone, and now we have our biggest knot of athletes, a three-way tie on a 1:09.47 slide in the first heat for Switzerland's Michael Hoefer, Anse Schetina of Slovenia, and Ander Mirambel of Spain. And for all of these guys, if any one of them can improve Melissa Hollingsworth and break into the top 20 overnight, that's a little bit less pressure, worrying about whether they can force their way in on the third heat before the guillotine falls.
Exactly, every 100th counts. You could see, Michael, how he tapped his toe and all the snow came out of his shoe. That shows how soft this ice is right now. I'm surprised that the times are staying as consistent as they are.
So at the beginning, this track continues to perplex, confound and delight. It's not delighting everybody, but it's perplexing and confounding an awful lot of us. I'm glad it's not just me.
Yeah, I slid on it this morning, so yeah. I should understand it really well.
Oh! Well, I think we all read that quite well. 99.1 kilometers an hour. He's not going to be in the top 20 at the end of this run. I think we can give that as an absolute racing certainty.
When you hear how smooth this track is when these sleds are coming down, you can barely hear anything, and then you hear a big crash like that. Just think about the impact that it has on your speed and your time, and especially these athletes' shoulders and their necks as they're being whipped around.
Yeah, I mean, a silent run with one resounding crash in the middle of it, and that, I'm afraid, that's going to break that three-way tie. He's 21st at the moment, behind Yuki Sasahara of Japan, who's the man in 20th spot. But he was probably shaking his head from the moment he hit the wall here.
Yeah, he's coming out at such an abrupt angle. Look at that direct line and a huge hit. Look at all the snow fly off the wall.
With him lean away to try and steer the sled dramatically into Telephone. Mickey Grunberger, we've seen him do that a few times here.
That is a mistake that he should not be making with the amount of runs that he has on his home track. Disappointment.
So the second of our three-way tie for 21st, Anse Schetina of Slovenia. And again, our camera team will be predominantly cheering, at least silently, for him. If you hear little yelps on the camera mics, it's probably them as well, urging him to greater things. 5:16. Well, he started 5:09 in the first heat, which really impressed me. Just dropped off the pace a little there.
Have a look at the focus, his eyes aiming for that entry into wall.
One of just two Slovenian athletes in the World Championship. Sara Levencic, his young teammate, made her first televised appearance a couple of weeks ago. And in the Worlds for the first time ever. He's 26 now. Runs the family transport company in Ljubljana. still in 21st place, ahead of Michael Hoefer.
Ausgangshorseschuh mit 41,71 und einer Geschwindigkeit von 100,89 Stundenkilometern.
Can he make it into the top 20? 100.9. That's a little slower, I think, than his first heat.
Just seems to be a little bit late into all of his corners and late off, and that just builds all the way down the track.
Well, he's got more speed at the bottom than he did first time down. Can he break into the top 20 now? He cannot quite. And that is 23 hundredths behind Yuki Sasahara, so that's still quite a jump for Andrzej Cetina. Our Slovenian TV cameraman gave him a hero's welcome in training with his teammate. They were all very keen to get photos with the Slovenian sliding stars.
Popped up off the block. When you're running on ice pushing a sled, you have to have constant ground contact all the time and be efficient. As soon as you have any steps in the air, you are losing time.
So the ice flying up there as he hits the wall from Martineau to Portago. And again, late on means late off. There is Andrzej, and immediately away goes Ana Mirambel of Spain. Started 5.13 in the first heat, 5.11, fraction quicker. And again, there's that tantalizing prospect of maybe busting into the top 20 with a good run.
Your time in the second run, 1:09.86.
Using that amber-colored visor so that his visibility is a little bit more clear for him with all the white around him, so he can see those entrances.
Tagesstopp mit einer Zeit von 28:47.
He'll turn 30 in Sochi before we head home, and he goes back to Barcelona to continue his summer training as he builds up for the Winter Olympic Games.
That was a lot of height he had in Horseshoe, but just at the wrong point. That's why he bumped the wall. 100.7 kilometers an hour.
Well, he was 1:01.6 in the first heat, so that has clipped a kilometre an hour out of his speed. 1:34.7 at the bottom. If he can get that again, then he's got a really good chance. 1:34.5, he is finding speed at the bottom of the track on this second run as well. Still going to leave him in 21st place, but he is closest to Sasahara, and in fact, he is just 16 hundredths of a second outside the top 20. And given Yuki's relative inexperience, Ander has got to see that as a definite makeable target. And without that hit off Horseshoe, he might have been in.
Look at all the height that he gets. Such a late entrance in a Horseshoe. Normally that's what you want, but right now it's fairly forgiving, and a lot of athletes are going up close to that roof, and then it's too much of a direct angle into that wall.
Hey family, gracias por el apoyo.
The track is clear.
Ana Mirambel shooting for the top 20 tomorrow. So too will Johnny Fairburn of Canada be 24th after the first heat, and Melissa Hollingsworth from an 18th fastest start, a run that didn't really get much better for him.
I know, that's really disappointing for John Fairburn. He's got his coach in from Canada. Kim Cousins is here, 5:05.
55.4 is good momentum in the first corner.
Just goes to show what we can't actually see, the details of our sleds, of how flexible or how stiff they are, or which runner cut that you choose for the type of ice, and it all is speed right there.
This is so similar in many ways to motor racing. So much of what's critical is all but invisible. Big mistakes are obvious, the rest is subtlety and nuance that is hidden from view. 20th place. It's a good-looking run. Now, this is what Johnny Fairburn wanted in the first heat. How much further can he climb?
It depends on what kind of adjustments he made. Maybe he increased his rock with this softer ice and had less runner on the ice. Oh, a bit of a bump in this uphill section, 133.6 kilometers an hour. Where is this going to put him?
That was about as quick as he managed in the first heat, and he is in 19th place, so he vaults up 5 spots.
Nice.
Well, now that is his answer to the track that denied him a little in the first heat. Only 300s quicker, but one of only a few athletes to really improve even substantially or minimally on their first run.
Nice line in Horseshoe. He has that height. Comes into It's pretty direct, though, and he gets into that frosty area.
A little bit of a tidier run, but the important part is he vaults up 4 spots, and he's in the top 20. Now here's a chance for a local boy. Alexandros Kefalas represents Greece. He's got a Greek father and a Swiss mother, lives just down the road in Somaden. 1 stop on the train from St. Moritz, and therefore lots and lots and lots of local support.
You could see all the ice popping out of his shoe as he was trying to navigate his way through that first kink.
A 5:18 start, just a fraction slower than his first heat. Tried to keep it straight all the way down here to wall corner.
Ooh, a little bit early into snake 2. Or snake 1, sorry, that combination. If you're too early, it'll push you away.
Well, he also slides Cresta. He's a swimmer, a cyclist, a martial artist. Born and bred in Switzerland. Could slide for either nation. 100.4 kilometers an hour. He's a little down on speed from the first heat. 134.9, 133.7, still not as quick as he was in that first run, and yet didn't look that much wilder. Coach Matthias Biedermann.
The one thing I noticed with his style of sliding is that he's having a lot of overcorrections. So he's keeping pressure in the sled, and instead of coming back to neutral, he still has pressure in the sled. You can see that right there. He wanted an earlier entrance, but he didn't let go of that when he had the right line. Bumps him away. Gets too much height there, kind of skids off. Same thing out of Martineau here, has that bump going into Portico.
24th place for Alexandros Kefalas, ahead of Michael Höfer of Switzerland, who's had a bit of a disappointing second run. So 2 Swiss residents representing different nations. Next up, Anton Batuev. If I tell you that he started 24th and came down 25th, you perhaps would not be overly surprised. But Melissa, this Russian, watch from the hips down. His 2 legs work as a pendulum. He steers a lot with them.
He does. So when you have pressure in the sled, that's creating friction. And especially when you're moving them from side to side, then of course your sled is going to respond, especially if it's a really flexible sled. Can you actually hear that scraping in snake 2?
Anton Batuev im Corner mit 28, 24.
Russians lie first and third at the moment. Sergei Chudanov was saying, great to see some good results in the World Championship for the Russian team. He's absolutely right. Batuev is going to struggle to make the top 20.
He does really move those feet side to side. Instead of just putting direct pressure over top of the runner box on the one side, he's trying to move his whole body, and he's leading. That'll come with some time and some experience for him to figure that out.
Not sure he's going to get time or experience from the Russians leading up to the games in Sochi. Already 27 years old. The Muscovite is very definitely their sort of number 3 or 4 slider. Well, he moves up to 22nd spot, just in front of Ander Mirambel, behind Yuki Sashihara. Batuev's a big, strong guy, but does not have the speed across the ice that he needs. Starting outside the top 20 is never going to be good. Well, here's another guy who will stop out the top 20. Still walking and sprinting with a cast on his ankle after... Ooh, and limping as well. Really hopping away there from the start is John Farrer of Australia, and that is not good news. That left carbon cast that he wears on his left ankle, looks like that might have broken again.
Yeah, that was a complete freak accident that he had last year, Lake Placid sprint training, where he had done a sprint, then he was slowing down and just put too much pressure in it. It actually tore all the ligaments and broke his leg, and now he's having a lot of issues with the damaged nerve. And he's regained some of the function of it, but not all of it. And that's definitely inhibited his training, his sliding, and also he's a very competitive mountain biker, so it's definitely changed his life.
Yes, it has, and he's going to need an intensive off-season of therapy and training in Sydney to try and bring himself back to where he wants to be if he's to make the Aussie team going into the games in Sochi. Currently moved up from 27th to 22nd position, so it is the start that is really troubling him at the moment. 1:33.6, 83 kilometers an hour, 18th fastest run. He is in 21st spot. Caleb Smith likes that. He's only 0.05 of a second outside the top 20. That's not a bad run at all. 1:09.48 from John Farrow of Australia.
4:56, jeez.
Yep. Well, there's the cast on that left foot. I wonder if maybe it's just the running that is just kind of a little hoppy there and unbalanced, because he's not got control of that left foot.
Yeah, he can't. His dorsiflexion just isn't there, and the ability to really push and use the ice.
Dorsiflexion. He's a NASCAR commentator, right? Dorsey Schroeder. Matthias Guggenberger of Austria next up. 15th fastest start, slid 28th fastest down the track, which means that it's after corner one that it all starts to go a bit haywire for him.
Matthias has been battling a very bad back over the last few years, and normally we're used to seeing him with a very fast start, but not this year. It just has not been able to be healthy enough.
Well, 5 flat in the first heat was the 15th fastest start. He's just gone 4:97. That's the 7th fastest start. That's how close these guys are. You know, you can go from being in the top 7 to 15th in 0.03 of a second. Right, he hurt his back before the first race of the season, closing the car door in twinged and fastened on him. I mean, that's not the athletic accident he won. 99.9 again in the first heat, did not have speed out of Horseshoe.
Look at the style on his sled. His whole body leans to his left side all the time. I wonder if that has anything to do with his back in the alignment.
Wow, 0.5 kilometre an hour and more, nearly a full kilometre an hour quicker on this run at the bottom of the track. 1:33.5, and that sees him finish a couple spots further up in 24th place. Well, he pulled out an extra 300s at the top, and that translated into a run that was 1100s of a second better. But you're right, the first thing that happens when you put your back out is your balance goes of your body.
Just his form, he always has a lot of weight over to that left side. He went very close up into that roof in Horseshoe. He recovered very well, slight tap with his back bumper going into telephone.
Well, he was the 28th of our starters. 29th in the field of 33 is Romania's Dorin Velicu. Let's see what he can produce. 22nd at the start with a 5:07. Again, if he can take a couple of hundreds out of that, he'll be up into the top dozen. Romanian, 26 years old. Gets down the wall, but avoids a big hit.
You can see with this natural track that those walls are not completely flat and straight. They kind of weave in and out. So if you get unlucky up against that wall and there's a bit of ice that jets out, you could very easily hit it and scrub a lot of speed off of your run.
Well, he can pop a bobsleigh clear across the track, so he can certainly do that with a skeleton sled.
Best to just stay right off the walls.
That is ideal.
Oh.
Go fast, don't hit things.
Und jetzt im Horseshoe der Rumäne mit einer Zeit von 41,85
heavy landing as he flops off the exit horseshoe.
6 Stundenkilometer.
Skidding into Devil's Dyke there. Late, skidding in Nameless. This is almost like a crazy carpet ride here.
Yes, it is. 29th at the start. 23rd fastest getaway, but I'm not sure he's going to advance above 29th place by the bottom of the track. 1:31.7, not great speed for Dorin. And he remains in 29th place at the moment. That was 0.6 of a second slower than his first run, which did look an awful lot tidier. In the background, the train that goes from St. Moritz down through Celerina.
You can see he has some holes punched out in his shin guard there. That's just to prevent him from fogging up. Skidding sideways going into, where is that? I think that's Devil's Dyke right there.
There is Dorian. Representation from Romania in every discipline here in the World Championships. Tiny team starting afresh in the last few years. Next up is Giovanni Molosano of Italy. One of our fast starters in the field. Started 7th quickest in a 4.93 getaway. This long, rangy Italian. 6'1" of him, 180 pounds.
He has a little bit of a different helmet than the rest of the field. It is an Italian brand. He let us hold it the other day. It's 500 grams heavier than the Uvex helmets, so I can't imagine that that would be much of an advantage in those high-pressure corners. Your face would be right underneath your sled.
Well, 500 grams is just a fraction over a pound when you're holding it. When you're in a 1G turn, it's about the same. When you're in a 2 or 3G turn, like Sunny or Horseshoe or the big corners at the bottom, your head has to support another 3 pounds to keep it off the ice. That makes a big difference.
Huge difference.
100.8 kilometers an hour. It's a fraction quicker than his first run. He had 132.1 at the bottom last time down. He's picked up a couple of spots already from 27th to 25th, but he's giving them away again now. No, back up to 24th place. 131.7, not quite as quick as last time down, but he does move up. Now that's the 20th best run, pops him up to 27th spot. And again, Melissa Hollingsworth, whatever else we can say about the track, among the many things we haven't learned is that right at the end of the day, it is still just about giving the same speeds for the same drives.
That's right. Look at the angles that he has as he's trying to push the sled. He was pretty far out with the one leg outside of that group, but he's a strong guy, powerful guy who was able to get through the technical difficulties. A little bit high late on Sachs. You can see he's skidding from side to side as he goes in this uphill portion, the highest speed of the track. What does he want to show us here?
He wants to show us the badge of the Polizia Penitenziaria, who he works for. So thank you to them. Grazie for letting him compete. Grazie to Ireland's Sean Greenwood for coming to the World Championships to represent his nation. Helicopter pilot from Vancouver area in Canada.
You can see any type of movement he was having in that sled, it was kind of pushing it side to side. The runners were not tracking straight. That will be friction on the ice.
Sean Greenwood, his family, originally from Ireland, moved to the west coast of Canada, moved back again, so he was born in Galway. In fact, born in Dublin, I think. Now lives out in Galway as well.
Sean Greenwood onderwegs in
3 kilometers an hour. Let's see if he can find a little bit more speed than his first run.
You can hear his face dragging on the ice in that high-pressure Martineau corner.
Down at the bottom, 134 kilometers an hour in the first heat, 132.6. Quite getting the consistency he wanted. So, lives and works in Whistler, close to one of the quickest tracks on the planet, and sliding his first World Championships here in the other one.
And a bit of height in Horseshoe, which is good, but now that sets him up with too much crossover into Telephone. Big hit, big direction change.
Big rugby player's build, perhaps not great for aerodynamics, but good for power. Now, leg substitution in the last week or so into the Italian team for the World Champs is Marco Zoccolan, after their lead driver Maurizio Ioli tore a hamstring in the lead up to the final World Cup race pre-St. Moritz at Eagles. See the flex in the saddle of the sled as he puts his weight on it to start sprinting out from the blocks.
See his legs out to the side. He obviously is not tracking straight, so he's trying to make those micro adjustments. Up against the wall, leaning away. Every time you do that, it's going to be causing more issues.
You can see clearly as he leant from side to side, the sled following his movements, which was not what he'd hoped for. He just wanted to stabilize it a little. Johnson Rivoli in the Torino area. His home track, unfortunately, then closed for business in the late autumn.
Another hit into telephone.
Again, a relatively new slider, 100 kilometers an hour is 2.5 quicker than he managed in the first heat. He had 130.4 speed down at the bottom of the track and should have maybe 2 or 3 kilometers an hour on top of that. 33.5, that's not bad. This is an improved run from the young Italian. First heat 1:10.8, second heat 1:10.1. Much better run. That doesn't move him up the order, but it moves him a little closer to Ireland's Sean Greenwood. And lays down for a challenge for our final slider in this second heat. That will be Lee Webster of South Africa, although I'm hearing again that we may have another second attempt at this second heat. Marco Zoccolan in replay, just hitting the wall there. Final regular slider is Lee Webster, the roundel of the Royal Air Force, and support from BAE Systems, who are a big defence supplier in the UK. He is a Royal Air Force officer, currently doing a desk job in London, but just about getting himself loaded, shakes his head, and undoubtedly a few choice words there in, well, maybe his native Afrikaans.
The one-handed start is very difficult to do technically, so if it's not something he's used to doing, obviously you can get off balance and have a bit of a wreck like that.
It made a massive difference to his start. 5:44 first run, 5:69 second, because you know he was losing his balance, Mel, and then it's all about staying upright rather than accelerating.
And hanging onto your sled, not tripping up and letting go of it, and it going down this track that's over 1,700 meters long on its own.
That might have given us an indication of what the perfect line today is, an empty sled with nobody driving it, but then again, that is mere theory. 98.8 kilometers an hour for Lee Webster, still faster than his first run. He had 129.5 at the bottom. Let's see if he can get up into the mid-130s, or at least low 130s. 130.0. And again, 6 runs in training. This is his second run in the race, so his 8th trip down the track, adding to the memory banks every time. Well, there's no question what will be in his mind overnight, and that's the start. Lee Webster start draw number 1. So he had the first of the ice and the last of the ice today.
So he's stepping behind the sled, coming out to the side. He gets a little bit over-rotated to his right and almost falls over. It's really difficult when you're trying to hang on to the sled, you're trying to direct all your power forward, but you can get over-rotated, and then you'll do just a somersault.
Well,
still a smile on his face.
Could have been worse, but he won't be thinking about that. So the rerun is for Spain's Ander Mirambel. Again, I'm guessing from debris in the track at some stage or some other anomaly, the Spaniard has claimed the right to a second run. And again, like Ed Smith of Great Britain, he has got to make this pay because his original run is now scratched from the records. So Ander trying to break into the top 20, started 5:11. Now it's a 5:13, which was same as his first getaway today. 54.8 is a little better first corner momentum. And the gamble didn't work for Ed Smith. He came down 0.03 of a second slower, didn't lose a position. He remains 15th, but Ander, well, he was just outside the top 20, 22nd place. Is this going to be enough to put him in?
His lines are looking very nice and clean and smooth, but how much work is he putting into that sled to obtain that?
107 to 101.3. This is quicker than his last time down. At the bottom, he had decent speed, 134.5. If he stitches these four corners together, this could be worth the rerun effort. Of course, then he gets the night to sleep and rest up before tomorrow. 134.3, a fraction slower, but what about the run itself? He had a 109.79, which is now history, and he gets a 109.64. It was worth it, but it doesn't move him a position. 109.64, he remains in 23rd place. But Melissa Hollingsworth perhaps a vital 1500s closer to the top 20, and in fact 21st, 22nd and 23rd are covered by 200ths of a second. So that's a very tight battle. He is 700ths off the top 20. And the man who leads by 900ths of a second is Alexander Tretyakov of Russia. Now this could be the most enormous day in his career to date. He's halfway to winning a World Championship gold medal, the first Russian male skeleton slider to be able to do so. What he's got to do somehow is put 2 more runs Melissa Hollingsworth down and stay in front of Martin Stukos, the man who nobody can stay in front of.
That was 2 great runs put together by Tretyakov.
Well, you know that Dukurs is going to come back stronger. Shelley Rudman had a second in hand overnight in the women's race, knew that Noelle Piker-Space and everyone behind would come at her hard, and they did. 900ths of a second is not even the blink of an eye. It is not a guarantee of anything. 2 of our 4 heats are completed, and this is the way the field looks. Some very, very tight battles there. And around that cutoff at 20th place, 700ths of a second covers 4 athletes. A 10th of a second covers another couple behind. So that battle for 20th in the 3rd heat, which is so vital because only the fast 20 go through into heat 4, will be ferocious. So, lots more sliding still to come, and with the potential perhaps of a little weather intervention as well. Who knows what more this St. Moritz track can throw at us. My thanks to Melissa Hollingsworth for all her words of wisdom, and congratulations on a great World Championships run for her. Join us please tomorrow for much more action from St. Moritz as we see who's going to become the skeleton men's world champion.